Hello, children. Welcome to the October and Halloween episode of Unfinished Business Television. I am your host, Jeff Galashaw. If you don't recognize the costume, Chef from South Park, come on, people. And with me, as always, is my co-host, Andre Joseph of AJ Epics.
How you doing?
And we are here again with your monthly dose of trailers, news, and of course, reviews. So, first off, I went to New York Comic Con this year, and, I kicked myself a little because I got to meet somebody who starred in a movie we talked about, I believe, last month or a few months ago. I got to meet Rachel Lee Cook. And
nice. All right.
Yes, she was just the sweetest person, very personable, very nice. We talked about Josie and the Pussycats, of course, which I love. And we talked about a little about She's All That, but also there's an old TV movie. I don't know if any of you have seen this before, but she did a TV movie with George C. Scott. And I watched it when it came out, and I don't know if they even still play it. But she talked about working with George C. Scott, and I kicked myself because I didn't mention the show or the episode of Josie and the Pussycats. But if she's out there or watching, or anybody knows her, please tell her how much we love that show. I mean, that movie.
Yeah, come on the show and let's talk.
Exactly. And I totally forgot. I was so starstruck. And I didn't want to ruin the conversation by like, hey, plug, So, but other than that, at Comic-Con, I noticed obviously a lot of superhero movies were around. But I noticed there, like in the years past when me and you've gone there, I guess studios and independent studios were more representative when we were there. This year, it was strictly like lagging than previous years. Like there was no IFC Midnight table anymore. There was no Shudder table. The only place I could find was Legion, which produced Mandy. At least a movie I love with Nicolas Cage in it. I don't know if you ever saw it. And
never saw all the way through.
Oh, you gotta watch that movie. That movie's in the Cage-a-sance. That is one of the better ones, and I didn't expect it. So I went to their table, got me a Mandy t-shirt and a little Funko from the movie. But that was it as far as like really movie or independent movie stuff. Excuse me if I missed it. I went on a Friday, so if you guys were there Saturday and I didn't see it, I'm sorry. I also saw the new Batman Superman animated film Super Sons, which I have to say is very excellent for anybody out there. It comes out October 18th. This isn't an official review. It's just from my point of view and seeing it. It is great. DC, I don't know why they're so controversial with live action, but really good with animated movies. Because it feels like, I don't know, maybe when it comes to the animated movies, the people behind the projects have more of a passion and they know they can do whatever they kind of want to as far as imagination goes, whereas movies, you have budgets, you can only do certain things but so much. But I'm like, give some of these guys who are animated directors a chance to do a live action. Maybe you'll have better receipts.
Yeah, that's what said for years, that the animation division is so much better. And I mean, that goes as far back as the Batman animated series from the 90s, even being a little more superior than the films that Burton and Schumacher were doing. So without a doubt, they have that love for the source material that I think the films sometimes, they're always reacting to trying to sell the merchandise, or they have to be different from Marvel. So yeah, I think I agree with you. They need to have these guys running the scripts for those features.
And yeah, because I'm like, and obviously they know the material. And, I'll admit, I'm not so much a fan of the more comedic ones like Batman of the 1960s or that Batman and Harley Quinn one where she's farting. I'm just like, okay, yeah, I understand you want to make them a little more normal and down to earth, but let's stop at certain things. But other than that, that was my one day at Comic-Con. Definitely next year going back. Comic-Con is back in New York. definitely check it out when you can. And hopefully we'll see you there next year, Andre, also.
Yeah, if I have the money and I could get there, yeah, I'll be there.
Okay. Now back to our regularly scheduled news. And okay, first story we should talk about. It's a minor one, but I know Andre really loves this story. The producers of the 007 movies, the Broccolis, have said that any actor who ends up starring in these movies has to commit to a decade's worth of movies. To me, I think that goes without speaking because, I mean, Daniel Craig was over 10 years in the role, and, you know, he always kind of voiced his like comments like, oh, this is going to be one of the last ones I do, but he kept going and going. So, and by the way, movie production, that's a 2-year commitment for one movie. So pretty much they're like saying, you got to at least make 5 for us, you know, of, you know, obviously differing qualities. Andre, how do you feel about this news?
Yeah, I mean, that's been the standard, is usually by the time you get towards 10 years, you've seen it with Sean Connery, you've seen it with Roger Moore, they start looking too old. And you guys talked about it when you used to do the Cinephiles, when, you know, like Roger Moore would do Octopussy, and then you put it with, like, you know, like a younger girl, it gets weird, you know? So unfortunately, if you're an Idris Elba fan and you were hoping he'd be the next guy, I'm sorry, that ain't happening. He would have to do maybe 3 movies and that would be it. So that definitely leaves the options open for somebody that I guess, you know, it's like probably 35 and up at this point in time. And I am convinced, though, they're going to go with an actor of color who's British. There's no doubt in my mind they're not going to go for Henry Cavill or, you know, I don't know, whoever. Like, usually Eric would attest to this. Eric Cohen, our old friend, who's actually still our friend. So you got to go with the guy that nobody really knows, who isn't a household name, because you want that person to really be adjusted and growing into the role. So don't expect it to be a Tom Holland or anybody else that's like a brand name with other franchises, or Tom Hardy. It's going to be a nobody that is right now a character actor.
Do you think maybe, what's his name from Bridgerton, Raj? I don't remember his whole name.
I know who you're talking about. I don't remember his full name either, but yeah, I think he would be a top contender.
I'm all for Tom Hardy playing either a Bond villain or a villain's henchman.
Yeah.
But really, in the 007 sweepstakes, I really have no opinion. I just wonder, with Clive Owen, you rarely see him on screen, or usually more in like television projects. Do you think maybe he might a little kick himself for not accepting 007 in the past when it was offered to him?
No, because I think even at that time, and probably to this day, I think he just enjoys playing different characters and working with, you know, established directors. I think he did a cameo in one of the Pink Panther movies where he kind of poked fun at James Bond. So I don't think he regrets it.
Well, see, my thing is, I could name actors who I'd love to see play Bond villains, but I can't say like, oh, definitely this person should play Bond. Because like Clive Owen would make a good Bond villain at this point. You know, he's got the age, he's got the gravitas.
But I mean, my concern isn't even so much who's going to be the next Bond, but more like, what direction is it going to take after No Time to Die? Do you start from scratch again? Do you continue and do the code name thing? I don't know. I'm more curious about that than who's going to put on the tuxedo.
Well, I would figure, since it's, you know, obviously a franchise, it's probably going to be James Bond. You know, whoever it's going to be is always going to be James Bond 007. I would like it, you know, in a Halloween 3 universe where those movies were supposed to be anthologies after that. We just follow the 007 and whoever the agent is. But it seems like, you know, the Broccolis are definitely like, no, it's going to be James Bond, you know, whoever it is. This is just a modern iteration, you know, whatever time it takes place in. But like you said, or like I was saying, I don't mind an anthology 007, but it saves it from going the television series route.
Yeah.
and do it that way. Or worse, Jimmy Bond, the movie. And
I don't think they'll ever do television. I think they know that would cheapen the brand. Plus, you had James Bond Jr. the cartoon, which I liked, but I know a lot of people think that's the black sheep of the whole franchise.
At this point, there is no black sheep of the franchise. Because personally, I like the stupid movies of James Bond, where you have like, was it the Southern Sheriff with him? You know, those are my type of James Bond movies because it's a little culture clash. It's fun. It's stupid. Sometimes it takes the air out of, and it was definitely better than Casino Royale, the comedic version with Woody Allen, Orson Welles, Peter Sellers.
Yeah.
So I will always go that way. So for the next story, this is another minor one that maybe you know a little bit more about the character. They're going to make an El Muerte movie, which is a character from I believe, Spectacular Spider-Man storyline, who's kind of a wrestler / vigilante, and it's going to star international reggaeton or international musical superstar Bad Bunny, recently seen in Bullet Train, and also directed by Jonas Caron. At this point, because you know how directors, we'll get into that and some other stories. The son of Alfonso Caron.
No, I didn't know that.
Yes. So, Andre, tell us what you know of the character and what are your thoughts on this?
Well, funny enough, I write for Comic Book Resources, so I actually wrote an article when they announced that this movie was happening. And yeah, I pretty much, you described it. He's like a wrestler turned superhero, and basically he's within the license for Spider-Man. So he's essentially like a Spider-Man. I don't know. I don't think he's a villain. He's like a kind of a sidekick, good guy. Like every now and then they team up. And obviously they're doing this for the Latino market, since Marvel really hasn't done like necessarily a Latino superhero yet on screen. I'm not a Bad Bunny fan. I don't get the hype. I guess I could kind of see him do it because he did do some stuff for the WWE. So he definitely has a love for wrestling, and he actually did impress some people at WrestleMania last year. So yeah, I mean, it's no surprise that they feel like maybe they saw enough of him in Bullet Train to be like, oh yeah, let's give this guy his own movie and make it a superhero film. But again, I'm going to put the Bad Bunny thing aside and just say, like, we're going to talk about Morbius later. Sony needs to calm down with trying to do their separate Spider-Man universe, because they think that people want all those characters in their own standalone thing. You're sadly mistaken. You got it okay with Venom, but then the rest of it is just complete, like, let Kevin Feige do what he needs to do. I know they're not batting at 1,000 or 100 right now with everything, but come on, guys, slow it down. Stop trying to force this thing of trying to, like, you know, oh, we're not going to throw everybody into the MCU, so we're going to do our own Craven movie and Madam Web, and then maybe we'll bring Tom Holland into our universe. Like, stop it. It's not working completely. Like, just not everybody deserves their own film because you have the license to do so.
All right, they're doing the UPN and WB and trying to create their own Spider-Man universe because Marvel introduced multiverse, so they're allowed to do it.
Yeah, now it's been legitimized, but Kevin Feige is not calling the shots over there. It's, you know, Amy Pascal and Avi Arad, and you think they had that same passion that he does? I don't think so. They're looking at dollar signs.
Well, that would explain more the, you know, fluctuation of quality of those movies, you know, none of which have been good. But
they're glorified B movies. Let's face it. Even the last Venom movie was pretty much, we're just going to have you check your brain out the door and just enjoy the ride.
In this, let's stick to like superhero news stories, because really we only have like 2 other stories that are non-superhero. Blade has lost its original director. And unfortunately, that has postponed filming and making Mahershala Ali not sure if he even wants to star in the film anymore until they can find a satisfactory director. And sources are saying that obviously they want to find more of an African-American director to direct this film, which, if anything, puts a showcase on studios not really hiring necessarily a lot of African American talent, or they tend to only employ the same African American talent behind the scenes. You know, they're obviously in this new generation of filmmakers. You can't just keep going to, well, it used to be John Singleton, but you can't keep going, you know, to the Spike Lees or, you know, Ryan Coogler. You know, you have to, you know, open the door for other people. It can't also always be Ava DuVernay or now Nia DaCosta, Gina Price Bythewood. You know, you have to actually give, you know, some of these independent directors who have been quite impressive, like maybe Terrence Nance, who almost directed Space Jam 2, and I'm kind of glad he didn't, you know, but like directors like that, you know, that is at least my thought on this, because there's plenty of talent. You know, you're not going to get Jordan Poole to make this movie. So what are your thoughts on it?
Well, if they're looking for black filmmakers, Kevin, call my lawyer. I'm available. Okay. I actually did some reading on this. So apparently, and this is not fully confirmed, these are sources that are going to Variety and the other trades. Apparently, they didn't have a good script. They said it was like a 90-page script that saw Blade existing in different timelines. He would exist in the 20s, then there would be like all these decades, and he'd still never age. It was this whole weird thing. And they had 2 action scenes in it that were lackluster. That's what's been reported. I don't know if any of it is true. So they're saying that Kevin Feige, because he has so many responsibilities with Marvel, that he stretched so thin that he hadn't really been hands-on with Blade. And so they realized things were not moving in the right direction. Marshall Lee wasn't happy with the script. And that's why they changed director, they changed writer. In fact, the writer who's doing the new X-Men cartoon is now writing the script. So they're going back in-house, and they moved the release date. And a number of other release dates for Marvel have been moved and shuffled. So now I think we're supposed to get Blade, I think September 2024. Now they're moving it like 2 months over. So it's going to be November of 2024. You know, look, I mean, there are people right now that think, oh, Marshall Lee should just quit and they get Wesley Snipes to do it. It's not happening.
No.
Unfortunately. You know, I trust that they will get the right person to handle this film, that they will get a good script. And look, you know, I think he's going to be amazing in the part, no matter how they do it. Maybe this is a good opportunity, if they're going to go back to the drawing board, to say, you know what, maybe the PG-13 thing, let's throw that out the window. Let's go R. Because if you're going to do Deadpool 3, which we're going to talk about in a bit, and that's going to definitely be R-rated, let's stick with the R rating for Blade. It's ripe for success, and Marvel needs that shot in the arm right now.
I agree. I mean, my thing is, I was looking forward to the movie. I'm just hoping that, you know, it's something decent and it's not like a one-off. You know, I'm hoping, you know, I don't know how they're going to tie it into like other Marvel movies, but I want it to be an essential character, you know. I don't want it to be kind of like, I guess, Sony's plans with Blue Beetle, like you said, sounds like a spinoff more than any, rather than connected to that universe. So I'm kind of hoping for that. I want them to keep the character humorless. You know, the movie can have a sense of humor, but make sure the character stays humorless. And let's make this before the actors start aging, you know, out of the role, or being able to make a sequel where you're like, whoa, he was looking kind of rough in the first one. You know, what is it? A deficiency? So that is at least my comment, but I'm looking forward to it. And I'm hoping maybe with when Wakanda Forever comes out, and if it's, you know, overly successful than they even think, maybe that will put pressure on Marvel to show that obviously there's a huge African-American audience that wants to see themselves on screen. And so we need to like make sure this Blade movie is quality.
I think they know. They know that like a black audience is going to show up, because everybody loved the Wesley Snipes movies, even though the third one had its issues. But yeah, they got to get it right. I you know, there's even been rumors like he's not even going to be the main character. They're going to make it his daughter. Stick with Blade. Just stick to what people know. Obviously, it's in the MCU. Just stick with that. Let's not start jumping up the gun for phase 7 and 8 and all that.
Here is not really a news story, but if you've seen the recent pictures of Jonathan Majors and his like jacked body, Do you think that is just him naturally, his health regimen, or do you think that's a Marvel body?
I think that's his regimen because he was pretty jacked in Lovecraft Country. Don't forget, he just did Creed 3. He's the villain in that. He's the
Oh,
opponent. So he's just getting the parts where, hey, we need you to be bulked up in shape. He's not going to do him and Michael B. Jordan are not going to do a Copland type movie for a long time where they have to like get paunchy and shit. That's not happening right now. They're going to do it while the iron's hot.
well, yeah, I can imagine. I don't think like Jonathan Majors being a character actor is like, hey, they want to make The Whale 2. Brendan Fraser can't make it. So you got to gain all this weight, you know. Well, since you already mentioned it, let's talk about Deadpool 3, which has been green-lighted officially. And Hugh Jackman is coming back to play Wolverine. Damn his body and his regimen that he's going to have to go through again. That's the only part of Hugh Jackman I feel sorry for. He's like, again? This damn boiled chicken and broccoli for like a year? But I guess it's worth it so he can be with his buddy, Ryan Reynolds. And, I mean, there's been some minor controversy. T.J. Miller supposedly said, you know, Ryan Reynolds doesn't like me. He got big and we don't talk no more. And, you know, recently that has been recanted, you know, so T.J. Miller is back in for arguably the only movie offer he's getting. What do you think? Well, obviously, I'm sure you're excited, as am I. But what do you think of this whole Deadpool 3? You know, they're starting to just, I guess, gel and get ready to make it.
Well, I don't give a shit about TJ Miller, so let's talk about the movie. Yeah, I think that this was the shot in the arm that Marvel needed because when they did their announcements for Comic-Con and at D23, it was just like, okay, we're getting more Avengers and all these other characters, and nothing was really striking out, like really getting me hyped up. So to see that video of Ryan Reynolds trying to say, oh yeah, we're trying to perfect this third film, and then Hugh Jackman coming out, I said, okay, now it's game. Now we got something we can get excited about. And this is what the fans have been wanting for a long time. And it's not going to negate what happened in Logan. I know they were saying this is going to take place before Logan. I think it's going to be like a whole variant thing with the multiverse. And I mean, again, we have to see how they fit Deadpool into MCU. So that's another story in itself. But I feel like that's not the only surprise we're going to get. Now, obviously, the way this movie is going to go, it's going to be 48 hours. It's going to be that Nick Nolte, Eddie Murphy bantering between Deadpool and Wolverine. There's no denying that. I think we're going to get more out of this than people expect. I think whether it happens in this movie or it happens possibly at Secret Wars, I don't think this is the last time you see Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. I think they're going to work in something to see him and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man together and have that whole intermixing of the old Marvel films from the 2000s start to come together a little bit. Don't ask me how it happens. I can't guarantee it will, but I feel like we're on the cusp of that because they're not just going to have Hugh Jackman come back simply for this one film, unless they want to just make this his encore before we get the new Wolverine for Phase 7 or whenever the X-Men come in. Because obviously it's got to be a new actor at some point to transition. I don't know how they're going to do that, but yeah, I don't think this is the only time we're going to see him. That's my guess.
Well, two things here. A, as long as Zazie Beetz is back, I'm happy.
Yeah, I think there were talks with her. She's coming back.
Okay, and two, poor Andrew Garfield. He never gets mentioned as like, hey, let's put him in one of these or cameo.
No, I don't think they're done with him either. I think you're going to see more Andrew at some point.
Hey, as long as there's more Andrew Garfield, even though I didn't like the movies, nor 100% his portrayal, but I'm all for Andrew Garfield getting more work. Tobey Maguire,
yeah.
Okay. I mean, he was the original. But, you know, unfortunately, as with all of us, he's starting to show his age, you know.
He is, yeah.
So it's like, oh, this is old Spider or old man Spider-Man. Old man Parker.
Old
see?
man Parker.
I'm already thinking of spinoffs. Call me, Sony. Call me.
Yeah, pitch that. Yeah.
I will gladly pitch that. I will totally write it. I don't want to direct it. I'll write it. Okay, before we get to our last story, just a quick question, or I'm going to state a theory, and I want to see what you think of it. Now, obviously, Alien or the Alien franchise, they're all science fiction movies.
Uh-huh.
But I feel like Alien, the first one specifically, is a horror film, whereas I feel like Aliens is more of an action movie.
100% agree. Yes. The first film is a claustrophobic sci-fi horror thriller. The second one still has those elements, but because you have the Marines and the James Cameron approach, it's an action film. There's no denying the difference between the two.
Yeah, because it seems like the first film is more about discovery because, they keep the alien in shadows and, the chest burster. And then the second film is just more about an overabundance. Like, oh, not only do you have this alien, look at all these different variations, let's up the gore factor. And then finally, more, instead of just running away from this creature, the second one's like, let's combat this creature. And then I feel like the other films in the series, those are more science fiction, strictly science fiction. They don't fit into any other genre. Oh yeah, I just wanted to put that one out there, since we're probably not reviewing any of those movies anytime soon.
That was a TV show, but that's not coming up for a while.
Yeah, until we see it, we'll see how that plays out. And for our final story, Rust, surprisingly, is going to resume production for some odd reason after a settlement was made between Alec Baldwin, the producers, and the young lady who died family. This is different from incidents like on the movie The Crow and all that. This just reeks of bad taste, even continuing this movie. The only reason, again, I could be wrong, the only reason I feel like they're even doing this movie is I feel like there must have been so much invested already that if they didn't complete it, it would be more of a loss. And secondly, I think in the back of some producer's sick mind, they think people will just come to see it for what happened on the set, like a macabre, element to watching the film. I have no interest in this movie, because not only because of the accident, but just in general. But Andre, what are your feelings on this turn of events?
I'm with you on it. This is not going to be The Crow where people are going to go in for the curiosity of, what was Brandon Lee's final performance and what could have made him a bigger star in Hollywood. This was a tragedy. And listen, I'm mixed with Alec Baldwin because I don't think it was totally his fault of what happened, but the way he's handled it is just, it's really troubling, and I feel that trying to continue this film, I get it if it's from the standpoint of, like you just said, that maybe it's just a pressure of investors saying, hey, we want our money. You got to finish this thing one way or another. Another part of it makes me feel like this is pure ego because he did say, like a George Stephanopoulos interview, that this was sort of attempted comeback for him as an actor because he was losing interest and he loved this script so much he wanted to do it. But yeah, I'll tell you the truth. I don't even know if they're even going to be able to get to that point to shoot it. And I say this because there's still a criminal investigation on Alec Baldwin. So there's still the possibility he could get indicted, for involuntary manslaughter here. And what will that do if, in fact, they try to do this thing? It's just going to make things worse. I don't see people running out to see this movie for the curiosity of what this was going to be like. I just... to support this thing is just going to feel ugly.
I agree. So that ends our news segment, kind of on a down note. Yeah. But also we must, one more little story. Since you're representing the movie, yes. Do you have any Axel Foley news before we move on?
Yes. So I don't remember. I think the last time we spoke, we were talking about the announcement that they had started production on a new Beverly Hills Cop, which is now Beverly Hills Cop Axel Foley, because they're going to roll back to Top Gun Maverick. So a couple of pieces of news have come out. So a lot of the original actors are coming back. Judge Reinhold, John Ashton, Paul Reiser, and Bronson Pinchot's coming back as Surge. So You have your core actors from the first two movies returning. So this is not going to be Beverly Hills Cop 3 where we're leaving people out. And probably the most surprising piece of news was, okay, so before I get to the surprising part, Mark Pellegrino, who was on the show Supernatural, he was also in the first season of Dexter. He's in the film as well, and I'm assuming he's probably going to be like a villain of some type. But probably the bigger surprise is Kevin Bacon's in the movie. Holy shit. Mr. Footloose himself is in this film, likely as the villain. I can't see him, being like the Ronnie Cox type character or like any kind of like good guy authority figure. He's got to be the villain, because when you do these movies and you have like a Steven Berkoff or Jurgen Prochnow, you have to have someone that's like deadly serious to be the polar opposite of Eddie Murphy. So it's perfect casting if he is a bad guy. I'm assuming he's going to be a dirty cop in the film, which is totally up his alley if you watch City on the Hill, and a number of other movies where he's played dirty cops before. So yeah, no, I'm actually more excited about this now because I think he's going to bring some gravitas to it that shows this is not going to be Coming to America 2. Thank God.
I want a Sleepers Kevin Bacon.
Yes, it's got to be that. I want the Sleepers Kevin Bacon. I don't want Beauty Shop Kevin Bacon.
Oh, you don't want to see him do an accent?
No.
The first two movie villains.
Unless he's like from Chicago, you give him a Chicago accent. I don't want him doing like the freaky blonde hair and the French accent. Hell no. Give me the guy that tried to rape Brad Renfro.
Tried? Well, I wouldn't mind if he had a Boston accent because he's already doing that on his other.
Yeah.
But then it might remind too many people of them. Let him, as long as it's not like a Tony Montana Miami accent, I'm all for it. I feel like, the man of all seasons. And no, if he was still alive, if we could somehow get Fred Ward in there, I would have loved it.
Well, look, Ronnie Cox is still alive. It's not hard.
He's not coming back. He's not.
Yeah, he doesn't want to do sequels apparently for some reason. From a little extra money, he could use it for retirement.
I'm like, it's not. I imagine he gets offers, but is he really getting that many offers?
Not as much as he just did the Star Trek cartoon recently, which was kind of weird. But
voice acting, that's a little easier. He can do that from home. It's not like he has to. Oh, I got to drive to the set, get makeup, wardrobe, deal with Eddie Murphy. Got to see Bronson Pinchot again. Judge Reinhold and his Republican politics. Like
he's Republican. I thought he was Democrat.
No, I don't know. It's Judge Reinhold. Somewhere, Randy Quaid is jealous, though. That's all I'm saying.
He could have been a villain too, but like a side villain.
Villain sidekick, henchman. Now that would be interesting. Or
throw James Woods in there. He always plays bad guys to black people.
I'm not going near that one. I can imagine half the language on the set and probably sexually harassing Taylor Page. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt might have to bring back the Don John body. Beat the shit out of him. Hey, Tony Danza, if you're gonna go that old.
Well, he's Republican too, just so you know. I know that for a fact.
Tony Danza?
Yeah, but he's just not out there like that.
Well, hey, according to him, he was a friend of Tupac. I'm just saying.
Imagine Tupac on Who's the Boss?
No, but you had Mike Tyson in an episode.
That's true, yeah.
And Garrett Morris was in an episode. I think those were the only black people on the Boss during its whole show.
Wow.
But anyway, let's move on. Okay, we're going to talk about trailers now. If you can do a 3D effect, that would be great, but this is the best you're getting now. Okay.
We have to start Patreon and get a 3D camera.
Hey, exactly. Hey, we take all... Other than subscriptions, we take all donations. Feel free.
PayPal.
Okay, PayPal. Hey, if anybody wants it, I will give them, my Venmo. So, it will be used strictly for the show. Maybe more themed costume episodes. Who knows? First up, we have the trailer for the television series Blockbuster about the life and I guess love at the last Blockbuster store in the United States or world in general, starring Randall Park and, well, I don't remember any of the other cast members' names, but it fits right into my alley. As you know, I was around during those rental on Fridays and weekend days. The only thing, obviously, because it's the most popular one, we seem to forget is Blockbuster, while having this historic thing, wasn't that great still in the first place. You know, think of all the Hollywood videos that are not getting represented, but I understand why we must use Blockbuster. And it feels like it's going to speak to a film fan's heart of those times, especially people who grew up during those days. You know, but is it, other than that, it seems like pretty much a typical workplace sitcom, and they just happen to throw it in as a blockbuster and kind of ride the nostalgia wave. But I like Randall Park as an actor, so I'm willing to give the show a chance. What are your thoughts on it?
I'm going to give it a chance too. I mean, of course, I was a Blockbuster kid myself with the, anytime there was a new movie out or a video game that I wanted to rent, that was my go-to place for a longest time until streaming took over. I don't know how it's going to turn out. I mean, for us, we'll get it, but for a lot of young people who never got to grow up in that era or like at the tail end of it, I'm not sure if it's going to appeal to them. I don't know if they're going to understand late fees and what it was like to run out when a new movie came out and it was sold out. Uh, that's going to be the hard part, I think, for people to relate to. And can it top that documentary about the last blockbuster in Oregon? Because that one, really did kind of touch the heart a bit, and probably, that's what sparked this idea of doing it as a show. I don't know, like, how long can this go as a joke before it gets stale?
That's true. And I mean, it just reminds me also of the sitcom Superstore,
Yeah.
like kind of like humor and that essential love story in the middle that oh, will they or won't they? And how many seasons are we going to keep them apart? Instead of like, typical things where it's like, let them just hook up and then break up for whatever reason. As long as it's not, How I Met Your Mother, where, oh, they're totally not going to get together, or are they? They're totally friends, or are they? Like that. And so I'm looking forward to it. Trust me, there are plenty of television series, and at least this piques my interest. So we'll see how that goes. Next up, we have not the new Black Panther trailer, which is kind of the same old Black Panther trailer, but with more footage. We see more battle scenes. We get a peek more at, obviously, who's going to be Black Panther. I like that a lot of this, I guess, again, since Chadwick Boseman sadly passed away, rest in peace, a lot of the trailer more focuses on not only Namor, or Submariner, as I know him, but also a lot of Angela Bassett, which I think helps and works because it gives that more emotional side. So this isn't just pure fantasy. And I think that I think Marvel kind of realized also what works, like as far as culture and how this film feels, especially for people of color and African American community, and also our understanding loss of Chadwick Boseman in the movie. And also, I mean, it's not too much of a mystery by now who's going to take over, but at least still trying to maintain that, like, who's it going to be? And it gives Winston Duke a job. So I'm happy for that, though I would like to see him play more roles in the, like, kind of us as the kind of nerdy, dorky father instead of always the muscle man. The man went to Juilliard. But that is my feelings on it. But Andre, how do you feel about it?
I'm just kind of like, look, let's just get through this already. It's no surprise who's going to be the new Panther. I am excited for Namor. I mean, I've been long overdue to see him on the MCU side, but yeah, I mean, like you said, it drives on the drama and, Wakanda pretty much, I guess, being attacked. You don't have your savior in T'Challa anymore. Who's going to take over? So they're trying to hit on the emotions to really get you to see that this is not going to be jokey. This is going to be pretty damn serious, and the whole movie is going to be a tribute to Chadwick Boseman. But yeah, I guess the Shuri thing just feels like it's too soon to do, and I understand why they have to do it, but it's going to be so hard to get through that movie. I'm not going to lie. It's so much to have to already endure coming off of that first film. And then, I know it's going to make money. I know people are going to probably like it, but, it's hard for me personally.
Well, see, my thing would have been if you wouldn't have made spoilers, obviously. If you're not gonna make Shuri the Black Panther, maybe like kind of I know this is gonna annoy people, an anthology thing where each movie somebody different kind of takes over, the role. Like this could have been Winston Duke as Black Panther, but then let's say he gets killed. So in the third film, we have his character, not him. We have to have a third one. So it's always like a baton. And how do they, with all this power and responsibilities, how do they rule? Sort of going back.
I know Winston Duke did an interview where he was saying how, recasting that character at this point, you have to have somebody that has those same kind of values as Chadwick Boseman did, because you're bringing yourself into that role. You're not just having to play a character. And I get that. I respect that completely. But, with Marvel or any superhero, it's bigger than the one person, right? So you can't just say, well, because he's the only one that really was culturally significant, that it only has to be him and nobody else, because I don't think that's fair to anyone who may have a chance of taking on that part. Even if you cast an unknown to play that role and at least still pay tribute to him, I think people could accept that, as opposed to like, oh, we got to not recast out of respect. I'm split on that whole situation.
Okay, but you will see it in theaters, correct?
Yeah, of course. I'm going to be one of those people just because there's not too much else out coming out this year. Might as well check it out and support it, because what else is there?
Okay, so I'm going to try and get opening day, so I definitely want to see this.
I don't know about opening day, but I'm going to see it maybe that weekend.
Okay. Next. Super Mario Brothers. We got a teaser of the animated movie with Chris Pratt as the voice of Mario and Jack Black making a return to the screen as the voice of Bowser. It's of interest, I will probably see it, but I will admit I will probably see it at home. Excuse me. Andre, what are your thoughts on this movie in general?
Well, I'm not going to lie. I saw that trailer, and as somebody who grew up with Nintendo, I was actually kind of excited. I thought this looked really good, and it had kind of an epic feel for what maybe we should have gotten in the 90s. I mean, not that we should have gotten that live action movie, but if we had gotten maybe an animated film at that time, I think it could have been like this. So I really do want to see this film. I don't get the whole hate on Mario's ass being small. I don't understand that shit.
What?
Yeah, that's a whole thing where like, oh, Mario's ass looks too flat in the trailer. Like, really?
Who's looking at Mario's ass?
No, that's the last thing on my mind here. To look at a man's ass. No.
Well, maybe this is like the Sonic with the teeth. They have to find something to complain about.
Well, and that's the other part of it, which is the Chris Pratt voice to cast. I guess he's Irish, probably Irish German ancestry. I don't know, but already people are bitching about his voice on Mario, and they want an Italian actor, because I mean you have the guy from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia playing Luigi. He sounds fine, Charlie Day. But having Chris Pratt to try to have a normalized Mario voice of a stereotypical Brooklyn plumber, I mean, I'm split on that too. There's a wrestler named Luigi Primo from AEW who I think could have done a better job, and maybe he could have brought it down a bit, but still be essentially the Mario we know. Why do we have to keep going back to the guy in the Jurassic Park movies because he's all hot and the big star right now? Get an Italian actor. This is, we're trying to like not whitewash cultural sensitive. You know what I'm talking about. Get an Italian actor. Get Robert De Niro to play Mario. Nobody will complain about.
Well, I mean, all right, look. Obviously,
Well,
I don't
Joe
know what.
Pesci. He's not doing anything.
Well, he is working.
And he has an Oscar.
Well, but here's my thing. I've always felt it's nice to have a big name do a voice acting, but it's not essential. Like I don't think Chris Pratt doing the voice is going to bring more asses in to see of people who wouldn't have seen this normally. Like, oh, normally I don't go see animated movies, but for Chris Pratt, I'm coming. Like if you wanted an Italian, hey, Joe, there's a man called Joe Mantegna who's still alive who does Fat Tony on The Simpsons. You have
Brendan Gleeson.
You could go through the class.
Ray Winstone.
The cast of The Sopranos is still out there, other than Paulie Walnuts. Hello, Christopher Maloney, Michael Imperioli, Christopher Maloney.
I could see Christopher Maloney do it.
Here's my most wildest pitch: Michael Chiklis. He played a worker on Family Guy.
Elias Koteas could do Mario. Casey freaking Jones.
Why not? That Canadian has played every kind of American. But I'll say David Cronenberg. Why not? He kind of has a heavy accent, even though.
Hell, get Adam Driver. He can do anything. He saw House of Gucci. He can do Italian.
Yes, but he was specifically Italian Italy. Shoot, why not Jeremy Irons then? Since we're going with wild casting of playing Italians. Well, how did you miss Jared Leto? That seemed like a perfect audition in House of Gucci to play Mario. How did they miss that? It might be the only time I'm pushing Jared Leto for a role. And we'll talk about that later, why. Oh, no. So, if he wanted to make his big superhero debut, that would have been it.
Hey, get John Turturro.
I don't know. He might be a little too. I mean, didn't he already, Italian it up in the Batman?
Well, isn't he legit Italian or like Jewish Italian? I don't know.
I think he's genuine Italian.
Yeah.
Hey, Nicholas Turturro, he ain't doing nothing.
He would be good. I enjoy Nicholas Turturro.
Yeah, Adam Sandler doesn't have a movie coming out, so Nick is free. I'd be like, shoot, what's next? You gonna say Patrick Ewing?
No, Patrick Ewing could play Yoshi.
That's true.
Scott Glenn for Yoshi.
Hey, Ethan Hawke, he's in New York, and he'll accept most things.
Ethan Hawke played Toad.
No, I'm surprised. I would have pushed Tommy Lee Jones to play Bowser.
That would be funny.
So you could hear the annoyance in his voice playing the role.
Martin Scorsese is Mario.
That's in there. I'd be like, yes. And Robert De Niro as Luigi. Now there is a perfect Scorsese De Niro joint.
We're gonna get so much hate. It's not even funny. Yes.
So let's move on before we dig ourselves deeper. Yeah. For our final trailer, we have Die Hard on Christmas with Santa Claus, with a movie called Violent Night with David Harbour playing the hero and Johnny Leguizamo from our infamous Regarding Henry episode playing the villain. And this is obviously more tongue-in-cheek horror, but with some hardcore action sequences. And it's nice to see why David Harbour was so jacked in Stranger Things Season 4. I'm looking forward to this, but as me and you were talking about earlier, this is obviously more of a B movie that's just being released to theater for the Christmas holiday. But I'm willing to watch it. It looks like it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I like those kind of absurdist action movies, and especially something like this that's like a throwback to Die Hard and John Wick, but it's Santa Claus and it's David Harbour. I think I may actually see this in the theater. This looks like it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, I don't know if anybody else saw this, but that movie with Bill Goldberg, Santa's Sleigh.
Oh, I heard about that, yeah.
Yeah, where in like the beginning, he kills all these infamous like actors playing a family like Chris Kattan, Fran Drescher, and I feel like this is like a feature-length version of like that scene, only where Sansa is the hero. So I might be with you going to see this in theaters.
Chris Evans is Mario.
I'm shocked. I thought he would have been the number one, but Chris Pratt has a bigger name. Ryan Gosling. He got a Brooklyn accent, even though he's from Canada.
I can see Ryan Gosling do.
It would have been better than the Gray Man. So, and Eva Mendes could then play Princess.
Well, they got Anna Taylor-Joy. I think she's a good choice.
She's a good choice for anything. But anyway, let's move on to movie reviews. Okay, so we have, count them, people, 6 movie reviews this week.
God.
Yes. So is there any particular order you'd like to go through these reviews?
No,
Andre?
round robin them. I don't care.
Okay, since we were talking about him a few minutes ago, let's go with Morbius.
Oh, man.
Directed by Daniel Espinosa and starring the Jared Leto with Tyrese Gibson, Matt Smith, Adria Arjona, Jared Harris, Al Madrigal, and a special appearance by Mr. Michael Keaton. And yeah, we all knew going into this wasn't going to be great. But here's the thing. I even hate to admit this. This was very entertaining for a bad movie. It's like, oh, it's horrible. I would not recommend it. But it kept my interest for 90 minutes to 2 hours. Not only because of its badness, but just because of its ridiculous nature. And the one thing I will give it, Daniel Espinosa is a talented, stylish director. I just wish the script was there to help him with this direction. Like, watching this film, I would be like, yo, if you want, if they ever make my dream project, Bad Boys 4, you're definitely on the list. But as far as a film, like I said, it's entertaining. I'm glad Jared Leto gets to play into his interests of being jacked and dark and his shirt off. But, I mean, Matt Smith as the villain is practically telegraphed, and it's just kind of stupid, and there's not that much action, and he's a good vampire. And then even you had warned me, and I agree, the, after credit sequences and Michael Keaton even being in this movie in general makes no sense. It's just like, but then, it's just like, huh? And it was obviously purely done just so, people would be of interest and see how it fits in. Even though they don't even use one of the scenes they showed in the trailer between the two of them. So it's just, the nicest thing I will say about it, it's better than the Venom movie. That I can actually say. But that's not really a high mark there either. I definitely would not recommend it. I would probably more recommend it if you were drunk or high. Then it might be that much more interesting. But just watching it in general, it's one of those so bad it's good, but not really good. Like, I wouldn't go watch this again. How was your feel? Now, first of all, let me ask you this. Did you see this in the theater?
I did.
See, I saw it for free. That's why I'm being nice to you.
I saw it for free, too.
Okay. And what are your thoughts on Morbius, the movie?
The bar was already low the minute that I even saw the trailer and when I went to go see it, so I knew it was not going to be good. I disagree about Matt Smith. I think he was the best part of this whole film.
Really?
Hands down. I think he kind of stole the show in every scene. As for the rest of it, yeah, there was some cool moments with Morbius attacking all the guys on the ship. The final fight reminded me of the Lost Boys. There were some little things here and there that were okay. But I couldn't help but notice how much of the Spider-Man references from the trailer were cut out of the movie completely, except for the ending. But even the ending, you could tell, was kind of tinkered with as a result of Spider-Man No Way Home, and Sony renegotiating their deal with Marvel, so they had to make some adjustments to kind of like clarify certain points. But the post-credit scene made absolutely no sense whatsoever in the whole context of that whole film and the universe that they were trying to build. So yeah, this is a movie that cannot be taken seriously. Jared Leto is highly overrated, and you could tell that he is just there for the paycheck and just to have fun at the expense of that paycheck. And it is just so dumb, and the effects are bad. The story, the dialogue, everything is just horrendous about it. And I wouldn't recommend it unless, like you say, maybe you get your friends together, get a bunch of drinks, get yourself the best pot in town, and just have fun with it. Because that's the only other way to see this movie. Because if you see it sober, you're gonna want to throw your fist through a wall.
I will say I think it's very unintentionally funny a lot. It's like this is your nightmare version of what Blade could have been with white people. And that's basically this film. I feel kind of sorry for the leading lady in this movie because she's actually good, but she has nothing to do. And she's in search of a way better movie. I don't think Matt Smith does a bad performance, but it's just the writing is so much on the wall for his character from like his first scene. And even when they're fucking kids, you already know, oh Lord, I can see where this is going. Jared Harris in his Renfield mode, he's obviously here for a check. I'm like, I wish, other than that, Jared Leto, everybody in this cast, and maybe Tyrese Gibson, was in a different, better movie. Yeah. Those two just seem like they belong in this movie. Even though why Tyrese is here, other than to put the pressure on Jared Leto's character, I have no idea. And why is there smoke every time he flies somewhere or just disappears? It's like, geez, like he can't make his own natural like mist. So, yeah, that's a no for me for Morbius. Since we're kind of in the gutter, let's go with Lou, directed by Anna Forrester, starring Allison Janney, Jurnee Smollett, Logan Marshall Green, and Matt Craven. So this is, I guess, maybe the producer's answer to Taken, only with Allison Janney, Emmy winner extraordinaire, in the title role of Lou as, well, spoilers, an ex-CIA agent, now a wilderness woman who's renting land to, this young Black woman and her child. Then the child gets kidnapped, and then it ends up she's kind of more intermixed with this family than originally thought. Look, I am not against a female action here, and even having an older one. But how about we write a good script for it, A. B, one that doesn't have so many coincidences that you're rolling your eyes. And don't hire an actor who resembles another infamous actor named Tom Hardy to play your villain. It's, I was hoping this was going to be like a whole woman bonding journey with, Allison Janney and Jurnee Smollett, who's a good actress, but she's really the damsel in distress on the side. That's pretty much her role, while Allison Janney's kicking everybody's ass over here. And the film was just like, okay, it's like sisters are doing it for themselves, and every male character is either villain or insignificant, because the sheriff, he seems to be around to ask questions and then they somehow escape him, so he has nothing to do. And I'm just like, I guess it's good if you're just looking for a basic action film, but it was just so too coincidental, so uninvolving, so like even the film's textures are so dark and grungy and gray that it was just like, this is not a fun experience. And and it's a shame because there is potential there, but it's just like, this is almost as bad as, what was that Jessica Chastain action movie? Not the 355, the one where her and Common and
Yeah, I forget the name of it.
it feels like that type of film where it's just like this should be entertaining, but it's just so sad that it's just like, this is not fun. And what did you think of Lou?
So I think when I first started watching it, it felt a little bit like the Nicolas Cage movie Pig, with her being in the wilderness and
Okay.
she's about to kill herself. So I'm thinking maybe she's going to be like that kind of character. And then once it started kind of kicking the high gear with Journey Smollett and then the daughter disappearing, and Logan Marshall Green's character coming into the fold, like, okay, now it's starting to pick up. Then I see Allison Janney kicking the guy's ass and cutting his throat with the can. And like, okay, now this is pretty cool. Like Allison Janney doing a Liam Neeson performance. This should be pretty fun. But then at a certain point, I felt like it started to drag. Like I just wanted it to end because it just started to get kind of dull. I didn't feel like, yeah, there was no bonding between her and Journey Smollett. And then the spoiler alert, the twist with the villain being her son was like, really, this shit's just out of left field. It just feels like they wanted to make something that was provocative, and it just feels like it was kind of forced in. I would have preferred it just being like, she's got to go and save this girl from him.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you need this third act twist? You could have had it any other way, or just have her son having disappeared and she never got over it. So it was just like, I think they were trying to double down on the drama, and it ended up dragging out what could have been a really cool action film for somebody that you wouldn't expect in that type of role. So it was a disappointment. I don't recommend it.
Oh wow! See, I thought maybe you'd recommend it with reservations. Well, I definitely don't recommend it since I glowingly called it in the gutter. So yeah, that's a no from both of us so far on Morbius and Lou. And I don't think with Lou even drinks will help.
No,
So,
it's not.
the next review, it'll be fairly fast, but it's a movie we've always talked about, but we never actually reviewed. Gilbert, directed by Neil Berkeley, which is about obviously the late great comedian Gilbert Gottfried. I think I told you about it and how much I really enjoyed it. I saw it, before he passed away. And, I just found it fascinating to find out so many little things about him that I never knew before, like, the fact that he was married and that he has children. But the thing I love about the film, obviously how much other comedians love Gilbert Gottfried, but also just how cheap the man was in life. That continuously surprised me throughout the film. And for a man who gets on stage and is so provocative, just how nebbish and shy and quiet he is just in normal life, and hearing his actual voice when it's not screeching and yelling, And I thought the documentary really, brought him down to earth, was a nice portrait. And, especially in the later part of his career when, he was still working, but maybe not as much, but everybody seemed to know who he was. And, I just kicked myself for, again, he was always at Caroline's Comedy, and I never went to go see him once. I always thought I'll catch him eventually, but unfortunately, I never did. And it shows, when you have the chance, make sure, you take those chances when you can. And Andre, since you just recently saw it, what did you think of the documentary?
Well, I spoke a lot about my upbringing watching Gilbert Gottfried when he passed away. So, I don't have to repeat that point, but I would say the thing that stood out to me was, like you said, how cheap and nebbish he was. And I kind of admired that, because for a guy that's done so many cameo appearances and all these big films, playing the voice of Iago in the Aladdin movies, for all that success, he was still that guy that would take the bus to go to Atlantic City to do a show, not get the greatest dressing room, take from the hotel condiments and the room service. He wasn't really like a guy who lived lavishly. He was just a normal dude, just doing what he did best. And I really love him for that, and miss that aspect of him, and it made me remind me, and I don't know if we spoke about it when he passed, but when he cameoed in House Party 3. Now I know that's like a terrible damn movie, but there was the story of how, like, he played like a flight attendant or something, like he was the ticket counter at the airport, and he does this one day scene. He shoots the scene and then he just goes back on the plane afterwards when he's wrapped. Like he that's the kind of person he was. He didn't really hang out on set all that much. He did his thing and he went. And my friend Richard Lampone got to work with him on a movie called Gender Bender, and had nothing but nice things to say about him, and just being part of that project, which was a comedy. The only thing about the documentary I think I was a little disappointed with, and I highly recommend it. If you could find it on YouTube, if it's still up, I would definitely say to go see it. The only thing I wish they could have tackled, even if it wasn't for a very long period, was when he was on Saturday Night Live. Because I know he was the one season, which was like the worst season of Saturday Night Live's run, and he was one of the guys that they got rid of after that year. I would have wanted to see his perspective on that, because that was something that always kind of fascinated me. But otherwise, it's a great portrait of the man and the life that we didn't know about, his upbringing and his married life and having children, and how that changed him. So yeah, if you're a fan, definitely go see it.
I agree. And our first positive recommendation of this movie. And okay, for our next review, we are going to talk about Pearl, the sequel to X. Just to remind folks, X is now playing on Showtime and is readily available. This is co-written and directed by Ty West. The star Mia Goth also wrote the script with Ty West. It takes the character who was introduced in X, Pearl, and we get to see kind of almost like her origin story almost. It takes place, I believe, in the 1920s or 30s. And we see, her living still at her parents' house. Her fiance or husband is off fighting the war. His family comes, is rich, and they come visit. Her mother is very strict, and Pearl is just in love with movies and wants to be one of those dancing girls on the stage. And then she meets an infamous projector who introduces her to porno movies, and she kind of acts on her feelings. And then that just starts a big hole in her life of destruction and death. But I'm going to take the Martin Scorsese route on this film. I think initially I liked the film, but upon more thought, the more I thought about the film, the more impressed I was with it. Like, I like the attention to the time period. I like that it wasn't necessarily sensationalistic. It took its time to get where we all know it's going to go. We get a little more insight into Pearl. We see the hard upbringing she has with her mother and, her invalid father. It has a lot of introductory jump scares, where we think, oh, she's going to push her father to that crocodile. But no, and we see how she slowly starts to kind of lose it. And I appreciated that fact. And even though it was violent, okay, I don't know. It's hard to explain. Like, X was obviously more of a slasher movie. This felt more like a character study that had horror elements in it, and I enjoyed that fact. And I have to say, even though I liked her in the first film playing double roles, I was really impressed with Mia Goth in this film for not only having the Southern accent down, but then her 9-minute monologue at the kitchen table where the camera never moves off her face. And even during the end credits, when she has to keep up that smile while the credits are going by, and you can even see her start tearing up from having to keep, that same facial expression. We are going into what I would say yearly, at least for me, there's always a horror film performance that stands out where I feel like this could be an Oscar nominee. And for me, her performance in this movie, more than X, would qualify for a Best Actress Oscar. Like, to me, Toni Collette in Hereditary, Lupita Nyong'o in Us, not necessarily so much Florence Pugh in Hereditary, though she was good. But, here, I'm like, Mia Goth is like, pissing in the sand saying, this is where I stand. I am a force to be reckoned with. I should be considered for better and bigger roles. And Ty West, I feel like this is showing more his range because, you know, he directs usually certain types of horror films that are more, you know, on the slow side. X was more of a faster slasher. But here, I feel like he's really showing how he can work with actors in building characters. And I really enjoyed the film. How did you feel about Pearl, Andre?
I felt like it was a bigger film than X, just from the production design standpoint, how colorful it looked. It definitely fit that period of like the Wizard of Oz and, all the films that came out around that time, and still having those slasher film elements that X did, but obviously it's dialed back to be, as you said, more of a character study, to the point where you really do feel and sympathize for Pearl as a character, and not just like this villainess who's out killing people. You actually understand why she's doing it. To see the troubled family, to see how all these people in her life that seem to, promise her a way out of the world that she's in, and then basically they get freaked out when they realize they're not going to be able to deliver that. So you really do feel for her in that sense. And Mia Goth was excellent. I still prefer X a little bit more, just I guess because it's more of up my alley as a slasher film, and obviously the 70s setting. And of course, it's a porno crew, so that makes it more interesting. But this was still good. This was still something that I recommend as a nice side piece to that film. And I'm looking forward to Maxine, the third installment. So to have it all together like that and to see how it's jumping from one to the next, I really look forward to that. But I'm really more curious. The thing that comes out for me is the church group that she auditions for that show, and their whole tie-in, I believe, with the church group you see on TV and X. There's something sinister going on there that I hope maybe Maxine will explore, but there's definitely something going on that that's the one thing I still think about more than anything else in the movie.
I think also you liked X more for Brittany Snow.
Yeah, of course. She's
great. I was like, hey, if you can find a way for her character, her great the past person to be in that film. I also found
I wonder if she's tied in with the blonde chick that she auditions with.
You never know.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious as to her husband's reaction when he finally comes home and all those years later, because she did kill his sister. So it's like, that would be an interesting aspect. I mean, I'm fine with the third film, and if there's no explanation, I'll be fine with it. But I also think that maybe with this film, since you were saying how, the one X was more about the 1970s and the porno crew, it maybe also, even though there's kind of gore and violence in Pearl, but it seems to kind of play clean to the time period. Yeah. Like, we see part of the porno film that, he shows her, but we never really see a graphic sex scene. There's no real nudity shown, it's more, and even the violence is more after, she murders the person, not necessarily during, like there's no head cut off and then just splurting and stuff like that. So I really like it. And I think it also shows Ty West maturing as a filmmaker, just in general. So would you recommend?
Yes, I recommend it.
Okay, I definitely highly recommend Pearl. Now we go to a film kind of set in the past. We're going to deal with Andrew Dominic's polarizing movie Blonde, about Marilyn, or the life of Marilyn Monroe. I really, really wanted to love this movie. Really want to. And Ana de Armas does a great job playing Marilyn Monroe. At first, it felt like an impression, but as the movie goes along, it feels like she's more in control of the role, even as Marilyn Monroe is going crazy. Look, I understand the criticism of the movie because, yes, this is a hard sit. It is depressing, sad, and the point of the movie seems to be wanting to show the two sides, that there's Marilyn Monroe, which is what the public wants and sees as the sex bombshell. But then there's Norma Jean, who's a little bit more of an innocent, maybe a little provocative, but more innocent and a normal person and has old school values. We see the past, like, you know, that her mother is mentally ill. She never really knew who her father was, and that every man who became like a husband was kind of more of a father figure than a, you know, necessarily a mate. And that, you know, like the sons of Edward G. Robinson and Charlie Chaplin were pretty much her true loves, but even they kind of used her for their own personal gain, even though they claim to be bonded and in love with her. Later, we see them trying to blackmail her husband, the baseball player, into, you know, paying to keep those photos out of confidential. So essentially showing that most of the males in her life either exploited her or used her, and even the public. And I feel like that's what upsets a lot of people, that we never see the glamorous side. We see nothing but like rape, hurt, misogyny. And unfortunately, that is a truth that exists in 1950s Hollywood and exists in Hollywood to this day that we're slowly starting to see. I like the ideas of the film, and it's beautifully shot, even though very odd aspect ratio. You know, one of the few times you'll hear me even talk about that in a movie review. But I can understand what there's no joy in this film. Like, there is not 1 second of joy throughout this film. And there's no subtlety throughout this film. Everything is pretty much said right in the dialogue. It's right on the nose, the whole talking to the baby thing. But I liked the movie's ideas as an exploration of stardom and what Hollywood can do to a person who is in that limelight. I don't think it was 100% successful with what it did. And for people who are attacking more Andrew Dominic, I think you also have to keep in mind, he's working off of a book. It's not like he originally wrote this script. So he's basically making this book into a film, and he's using the ideas from the books and expressing it artistically and visually for himself. So I don't put all this blame on him. I haven't read the book, but after watching this movie, I'm a little more interested in reading the book. I'm not going to say I would recommend this movie, but it almost made a recommendation, because I don't think, unless you're really looking into the idea, to research the ideas, I think this is a film that's more about an idea rather than a person. It's more using that person as to, I guess, kind of show the idea and the theories that are being introduced, if that makes sense. That is my feeling about the movie. How did you feel about Blonde?
Basically, everything you said is why I don't recommend the film. And look, the positives, Andy Armas was excellent. I think she really did capture the look and the essence of Marilyn Monroe. And I even got to give props to Adrian Brody playing Arthur Miller. He was, you know, definitely dead on in that performance. But yeah, the rest of the movie is just, it is uncomfortable to sit through. I feel like they made this movie purposely for the Me Too movement, with all the relationships that she had and how she was treated, especially the scene with JFK. And it's just, you know, it felt kind of exploitive in a lot of ways. Being artistic, and I get what they were trying to do to show the real story, but yeah, I think they just want to like really hit you on the head with, you know, the fact that she couldn't conceive a child, that she had been misused, abused, and all sorts of terrible things that happened to her that ultimately led to her tragic passing. And it was just so hard, and it was too damn long to sit
I
through.
agree with the
That was the biggest problem of all, was just like I had to stop and continue at times because it was too much, because I would get sidetracked with something else. And you know, I think that's kind of an issue sometimes with Andrew Dominic's movies. I like Assassination of Jesse James. I didn't like Killing Him Softly.
Yeah, I like both those movies.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's a movie that I feel like maybe if you want a good Marilyn Monroe movie, it would be the one with Ashley Judd and Mira Sorvino, the HBO movie from back in the 90s. That's probably the best you could get. This one was just hard. I'm sorry to say, I cannot recommend it for anybody to watch, especially if you're a Marilyn fan.
Yeah, definitely if you're a Marilyn fan. But I feel like that thing you said about how it felt exploited, I think that was to me at least, that was what the film wanted you to feel, because showing how she was exploited by all the men. In fact, it seemed like Arthur Miller was the only one in general,
the only guy that really cared.
But even with that, it seemed like he was also using her for material in his plays.
Yeah.
It seemed like Joe DiMaggio cared about her, but he wanted a housewife, not a movie star.
Right.
You know, so that was their problem. And, you know, I think also another reason why a lot of people don't like this movie, or certain, like the JFK scene, it shows people that we've grown up with who are supposed to be heroic and non-problematic, and shows, unfortunately, they were human too, and that they had problematic details about themselves, or maybe their relationships with women, you know, and obviously we don't like that, because again, like you said, with the Me Too movement, a lot of our favorite people we find out are like, might not be as heroic and nice as we think them to be. So I like that aspect of the movie, but I can, like you said, with the length and everything, I can honestly say this is a one and done movie. Like, I've seen it once. I probably will never want to watch it again, but I still think Andrew Dominik is a very good director. And even though it's barely in there, I do like the score by Nick Cave and Warren Ellis, especially in one particular scene. I really love the music that was used there, but definitely, just for surviving this film, I think Ana de Armas deserves a Best Actress nominee, at least, because this is so far her best movie. I think all the sex we wanted to see, you know, that wasn't, you know, rapey, from the Ben Affleck movie, they put in this movie, because I'm just like, wow, she's naked, she's doing this. Where was all this in that other movie? You know, when she was the one who had all the power and strength. So that is unfortunately a hard-bitten no on, or non-recommendation on Blonde. And we come to our final review. Since we're talking biofilms, let's talk about this bloated biography with Tom Hanks as the horror movie villain in his role as the Colonel. That's right, folks. We're talking about Baz Luhrmann's Elvis. The movie's about Elvis Presley's life, from the beginning of his stardom to almost his death. But the main star of this movie is a little Hungarian manager by the name of Colonel Tom Parker, played by Tom Hanks. It's a Baz Luhrmann movie. It's a tragic film, but it's so crazy and fun, you can't help but enjoy what you're watching. And for the most part, half the movie is just recreations of concerts. You know, there's a lot of that. Austin Butler is fine in his performance. He's really good. But then it seems like they would always interrupt the movie to remind you, hey, I'm still here. I am the Colonel. You know, and it's just like, it's almost like watching a movie with a horror film narrator. He's the crypt keeper. I recommend the movie, surprisingly, because I enjoyed the performance scenes. I enjoyed the dramatic scenes. But I don't feel like you really learned too much you already didn't necessarily know about Elvis, other than him being blackmailed by the Colonel at most of the time and manipulated. I mean, obviously, we're not going to talk about his liking of underage girls, because this is more of a heroic film. We're not going to talk about the strange relationship with his mother. And we're just going to breeze by his kind of, you know, borrowing and being influenced by black musicians and their sound. You know, we're just going to be like, hey, he was friends with B.B. King, you know, and he liked hanging out in black neighborhoods, something somehow we've never heard of before. So, I mean, like I said, it's a perfect film for the masses who are fans of Elvis. You know, I don't think you're going to find anything really that controversial about it. And I enjoyed the ride. You know, I don't take it as 100% true, you know, biography of him, but it's a pop musical version. And I agree with something you said before in a side conversation. I don't think, like his other films, you needed updated versions with modern artists of the songs to be played during the film. You know, using the originals would have been fine. You know, I don't think the audience would have been like, hey, I don't like this. This isn't Moulin Rouge. It's, you know, that's my, that's how I felt about Elvis. How did you feel?
Yeah, I am going to say it was actually pretty decent. You know, not being a big Elvis fan, but I did like Austin Butler's performance. I liked how grand it felt because, you know, if you're going to do a story about Elvis, it's got to be big. And I also say, yeah, the good production design, you kind of got a good facet of him from those different decades all the way up until, you know, Fat Elvis era. You know, that whole burnout. But yeah, the Tom Hanks part was just too damn creepy with the makeup. And I'll tell you the truth, before I saw the movie, my friends, Michael Schiavo, my friend Albert, they did a play called Elvis Left the Building, a local play here in Staten Island. And I think they did a much better job than some of these actors in the film, especially my friend Mike playing the Colonel. He didn't do the weird accent, but he did the, you know, the fake American accent. He was very good at it. So I highly recommend him. But yeah, Tom Hanks just totally overdid that part. He made it too evil, too creepy, and they needed to do better makeup than whatever the hell they did to his face. Jesus, he looked like Pizza the Hut from Spaceballs. And yeah, I was totally bothered by the use of pop music in this film. Like, his music is popular enough that it's always used in like anything that's dealing with Vegas. You know, any movie dealing with Vegas, you're going to hear Elvis music. So everybody knows, you know, Less Conversation, or, you know, some of his other hits. Why do we need Jay-Z music in this film? You're not aiming for that audience. You're just aiming for people that never knew who this guy is. We're going to have him. What, you're going to throw in Bruno Mars and all these people? You don't need that. Elvis stands on his own without all that shit. But other than that, I still liked it. I recommend it. It's fun. I don't think it's Baz Luhrmann's best film,
No,
but it's still, you know, it's of quality. That's what I'd say. But I would probably recommend more the John Carpenter Elvis movie with Kurt Russell, the TV movie from 1978. That one, I would say, see that over this.
not Heartbreak Hotel with Charlie Schlatter and David Keith.
Oh, no.
My personal favorite Elvis movie, next to Elvis Meets Nixon, the TV movie. Like I said, I enjoyed it for what it was worth. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of wish I would have seen this in theaters because, like you said, it's so grand. It feels like it belongs there, you know, more than watching it at home. But the one thing I can say, I'm glad I didn't pay for it. But you know, I don't know. I feel like Tom Hanks. I think he's trying to show range, and I think that his involvement probably helped the budget, you know, of the film. And he's the only real recognizable name, unless you want to count Nightcrawler, Schmidt McPhee in a small role. And you know, I have a feeling he's going to be nominated for the Razzies this year, though.
I can see it, yeah.
It kind of reminded me of him playing the Russian in Cloud Atlas, you know, like so over the top. Like, and it just I sat here just to bring it to something we talked about earlier. How come he wasn't considered for Mario?
Well, he was considered for the live action movie, and they thought he's not a serious enough actor to do it. This was before Philadelphia came out.
I would have more put him down for Luigi if we were doing the live action movie. You know, he looks more like a Luigi. They got the perfect guy for Mario, the live action version. But yeah, I still would recommend Elvis, and you said you would, right?
Yeah, I recommend Elvis.
that
Rest in peace, Bob Hoskins.
Yes, exactly. Always. Didn't sound like the strongest recommendation, but I'll take it. Yeah. So
it's good. It's not great.
Yeah, it's entertaining. You know, it's better than Morbius. You know.
Oh, way better than Morbius.
And not as sad as Blonde. So that ends this week's business. But as you know, there is always unfinished business to be done. And I have to ask you folks, have you seen We're All Going to the World's Fair? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome. Andre, what is your recommendation for this episode?
Have you seen Disney's The Great Mouse Detective? If not, why not? Because it is fucking awesome.
And perfect for Halloween. That ends this episode, folks. But we'll see you next time.